okay, so here's my thing. I don't know how they did this in 1918 or any of the other times before. Quarantining without technology, I would have gone down in history as like some sort of serial killer.
If you look at like the Black Plague or like whenever they would have smallpox or something epidemics in like London, people went psycho. The people who invented raves back during the Black Plague, I get it now.
Now, I will say the Black Plague masks were a lot more fashionable than the ones we're sporting sometimes. I mean, I've seen some pretty cool masks. I think there was a diamond-encrusted one. It's like millions of dollars, and I'm like, see, you're the kind of people we hate. I can get a cricket and cut out some glitter paper and make it. I mean, that's the extent of my fashion sense when it comes to masks. I've made a few, but nothing with diamonds.
I've just ordered them in like complementary colors to what I usually wear, so like I've now officially accessorized my masks.
I just want masks that scream, "Stay the f*** away from me." Anyway, so hi everyone, welcome to StormCrows TV. I'm Emily.
And I'm Allegra, and if you can't tell, we are feeling extremely pandemic casual right now, so live with it. I don't know.
Don't expect any level of professionalism. I am amazed we're upright.
It took Allegra 45 minutes to figure out Skype today, so.
It took me 45 minutes to figure out how to get out of bed. So thankfully, Skype cooperated mostly with me. I had some audio issues, but like the life aspect of everything else, yeah, that's been a chore. So 2020, it's been great.
Technically today we're talking about something awesome that somebody just randomly posted to me on Facebook and was like, "Hey, Allegra, have you seen this?" No, I had not. And it is Pride and Prejudice, the musical. And it is available on Amazon Prime.
Okay, so when Allegra first mentioned this to me, I wasn't sure if she was being serious about this being a good movie or a good play, because sometimes Allegra hate watches things. And she'll say something's good, but what she means is this is so bad it has circled back to good.
I think that still counts as good.
You and I disagree on some things. So like, there have been things you're like, this is amazing. And I'm like, okay, oh, you meant shit. Okay, it's amazingly shit. And I can get behind hating it. So I wasn't sure what to expect when I went into this because I didn't ask for clarification. I wanted to be surprised. And I was surprised. Pleasantly.
I will say that when I first started watching it, like, the person who had recommended it to me was also like, oh my god, I don't know what to think. And so then I was like, well, whatevs, I'll watch it. And I start watching it, and I'm going, oh my god, I don't know what to think. And then all of a sudden, like, partway through, I was in love with it, and I don't know how we got there.
I'll just interrupt and say, yes, there's going to be some technical hiccups. So if one of us is talking and our mouths stop moving, we are aware that's happening. I just can't do anything about that right now. But we are aware it's happening, and we're going to work on fixing that in the future. So please be patient. We love you. Anyway, so yes, back to the... It does really start like that, where you're watching it and you're like, But then by the end of it, it really does grow on you. You realize you're hugging a pillow, like, with the goofiest grin on your face, like... True as that is for the entire play, that is especially true for the guy who plays Darcy.
Yes.
Because when I think Darcy, I think baritone. I think like the Howard Keels of the world. He's gonna come out and kiss me, Kate, all Petruchio-like with a deep, guttural voice. And then this guy opens his mouth, and the first thing that comes out is this falsetto. And I'm like, oh, he's a tenor. So I was already kind of skeptical. But then by the end, there's this sort of Luke Evans quality to his voice. And you realize he's the most talented singer on that stage. And I'm going to get into why I've come to that conclusion later. But yeah, I mean, he won me over. His vocals were always on point.
Honestly, when he started singing at the very first, and then you meet Wickham, when Wickham came out, I'm like, oh, Wickham has a way more, like, impressive, like, belting it out. This big Disney style, like, Mufasa kind of number.
Yeah.
Or I guess like, but technically. But, like, he just belted out, and I was like, yes, you chose the exact right Wickham, because he sounds at first way more impressive than Darcy.
Well, I was just going to piggyback on you because I was looking at the notes that I wrote while watching it the first time. I watched this again. I wrote, holy crap, Wickham, was not expecting that voice. That's what I expected from Darcy. Though by this point, he had already grown on me. Then I also, just, an addendum, right after the way more tenor than I expected note, I wrote, Darcy does have cheekbones for days, though, and shit, his teeth are so straight.
I hadn't even really noticed, so good job for you for noticing that.
Of course I noticed. I'm like the Domenico-obsessed fangirl. I noticed men. It just happens.
To be fair, you noticed a lot of details. Like, I'd watched it twice, didn't notice that the actress playing Jane was pregnant.
Yeah, that was like the first thing I know. I texted you, like, right off the bat and went, okay, she's the costume person. Like, I know those dresses can have that effect on people. So I was like, am I just looking at this wrong? Am I not understanding fashion? But then she turned and it hugged the baby bump, and I'm like, okay, yeah, she's about to pop.
To be fair, though, like, on her, like, I didn't really notice it. I wasn't really looking at Jane that much. And, like, good job, costumer, because that was pretty well hidden unless you were really paying attention to details. Because honestly, I was spending more time staring at Elizabeth.
You will be impressed with me. I did spend some time looking at the costumes. That's for people who have watched some of our past videos, that's usually Allegra's dominion. I'm not the costume fashion person. But in this one, I'm like, oh yeah, those lines are so clean. Like the bodice that Mrs. Bennet was wearing. I was like, wow, they did a really good job. Theater tech really came through. And I think that is part of why I noticed it so much, because I have a theater background and I so appreciate the theater tech. And so I was just looking at all these costumes going, wow, that's really cool. Little hiccups here and there.
They obviously did not have an unlimited budget for staging or for costuming.
Right.
But what they did with what they had was really impressive. I thought they did really well with limited staging. And then, like, the costumes, like, Elizabeth has, like, I think maybe 2 major costume changes. Like, she goes to a ball and really all they do is put some ribbon on it. But I was like, that's almost kind of period appropriate because it's kind of what she did. And plus it just fit her personality. And I was like, okay, they did a really good job of personality tying into the clothing.
Well, it also shows the versatility of a jacket. That jacket comes off and on a lot, and it really does sort of set her mood, I suppose.
I also thought that was an homage to the 90s Pride and Prejudice miniseries with Colin Firth and the makeup to give him extra cheekbones. At the same time, that Elizabeth wears a lot of different jackets. So I almost wondered if they were kind of pulling in like references to some of the other earlier versions. Because like I also noticed they did the thing that the Keira Knightley Pride and Prejudice did, which was Mrs. Bennet in kind of an earlier era of gown, and so is the aunt, evil aunt.
Catherine de Bourgh.
Yes. The illustrious Lady Catherine de Bourgh. Aunt Catherine. She's also kind of in an earlier period. And they did that in the Keira Knightley version, which is still the prettiest version in my opinion. Like, yes. That's my go-to, but I just want to watch something pretty on the screen.
I will say, watching the musical and then watching that version, you appreciate it more. I know for a fact, because just before we sat down to record, I finished watching Pride and Prejudice with my sister, because I found out she hadn't seen it. And I was planning this Death Comes to Pemberley marathon on Christmas Eve. Marathon. There's 3 episodes, but we're going to marathon this.
A binge. It's a solid binge.
It's a good one. I think he's my favorite Darcy. But anyway, off topic. I had her watch that one. But speaking of the costumes, I do like how the costumes really tell the story of a character, and I recently found this out. You can actually chart, I forget the actor's name, but the guy who plays Darcy in the Joe Walsh version, his characterization is through his clothing. When you first see him, he's all done up right. The clothes fit very perfectly and tightly, and then by the end, when he's walking through the grass, like, it's like everything's loose and open. You see his chest at the very end. He's not even wearing boots, and you're like, oh, he's loosened up and he's free, and he no longer cares about being so tightly wound. And I do like how even on stage they tried to kind of accomplish that, even though they obviously didn't have the same budget. As you would see in Act 2, in some of those fountains in the river. Those were interesting.
I really did appreciate how they did the river, but yeah.
The river was fun. I have no complaints about how they do the river. They got this velvety blue fabric and they laid it out over the stairs, so you had this illusion of a brook. But man, that fountain, I'm sorry. Like, I know they didn't have a great budget, but You could have cricketed something better. I'm sorry. Like, I like their tech department. They obviously spent all their time doing the clothes and making some of the sets. But not that fountain. That, I think, was just slapdash right at the end. Like, oh shit, we forgot to make this fountain. Someone go get me some toilet paper tubes right now.
I mean, every play has to have that one thing that obviously broke right before, and you clearly just placed together out of random things you found.
Funnily enough, I was in a play that sort of made fun of that, and we built this set, and the fireplace falls over. It's like a whole panel with the fireplace painted, and it falls over, and our actual tech people came out, looked at it, well, oh shoot, and then they picked it back up to put it back, and the fireplace was upside down, and it stayed upside down the entire play. So I mean, it happens, and it happens so much that there's even parodies of it happening. So, but you know, Darcy was good, and it's good that they got someone who has such a great vocal command, because there was a lot of key changes within the songs, and not every one of those actresses could handle that. It was almost distracting sometimes how bad it was for some of them, especially Charlotte, the very first song.
I just figured that was like in character for Charlotte, just not quite being as good at things.
Well, I was just like, there's just way too much dissonance. It made it sound like she couldn't sing in key. And then as the play goes on, you notice it more in other people. And I think the only two other people who really handled it without any problems was the man who played Bingley and the woman who played Jane. In fact, Jane was so good, I wondered if maybe she had been Elizabeth first before she got, But Elizabeth did get better at it.
I loved Elizabeth, and like Mary won my heart whenever she, like, they kind of use Mary a little bit as a Greek chorus. Like, Mary does random scene announcements, and then she has this exchange with Mrs. Bennet where she's like, "But mother, I don't want a husband." And Mrs. Bennet's like, "Every one of my girls will have a husband, even you, Mary." And she goes, "I suppose, but it shan't be pleasant."
And then in Act 2, after Lydia does her Lydia, and she's like, wow, she's going to be totally ruined. There is no way she's going to come back from this. And the mother just flips out and does like a high-pitched wail and runs off the stage. And then they're like, oh, we're going to go tell her everything's been sorted. She's like, oh, I want to tell Mother. I want to see the color drain from her face.
Mary is amazing.
Yeah, she's so underrated in this one. Elizabeth, though, was very adorable. The wig was obviously a wig, but still very adorable. It was good for low-budget play wig. She looked a lot like Lily James. Like, I was expecting a zombie to pop up at any moment.
I refuse to drag any production for wigs after watching Game of Thrones now, because, like, they had all the money in the universe.
You know what? That's a good point. I forgive them for the fountain after season 8 of Game of Thrones. I mean, it had a much bigger budget, and we still couldn't see that last battle. So, good job.
No, like, I love that this wound up on Prime, though, because I'm guessing it wound up on Prime very quickly due to Pandemic Land. But I really hope this makes it to a bigger audience because of it, because it's really cute.
It is so cute. There was one point I actually had to go back and rewatch it because the cuteness distracted me, and it was that first fight at
Yes. I have rewatched that so many times. That's the best Darcy moment in any version of Pride and Prejudice.
Right, and I think this is what was missing from the original text, the melodious asides of Mr. Darcy. They're taking a turn around the room, and they get into that fight about what makes an accomplished woman and how pride is it vanity or virtue and whatnot. And so they get into each other's faces, and she walks off, and he goes, oh God, I like her eyes. It was just like, everyone in the theater started laughing, and I started laughing, and I'm like, this would have been better in the movie, I think, if we had that moment where Darcy's like, well, crap, I like her, but I can't like her because these reasons that I'm gonna list, and okay, I'm gonna keep it all in, and then goes back to, like, that would have made Joe Walsh's version just perfect. Though, again, after watching the musical, you go back, Matthew McFadden, or Fatty, whatever his name is,
Matthew McFadden.
Yeah. You see it kind of happening behind his eyes, and you can imagine the looks he gives her. You're like, I like your eyes. And it's like, yeah. Didn't realize how great. I knew he did a good job. Never going to say he did a bad Darcy. But you don't realize how great it is until you realize how much he's saying with his eyes and not on screen.
Yeah, I think one of my other favorite Mr. Darcys is the Lizzie Bennet Diaries Darcy. Have you ever seen them? They used to be on Prime. I don't know if they still are. It started out as a YouTube series, so it's probably somewhere on YouTube still.
Oh, yeah.
You can buy it for pretty cheap on Prime, and they're completely worth it. One of my best friend and I like binged it when she came over. She'd had like a horrible day. She was gonna have to have surgery, so we spent like 2 days just watching Lizzie Bennet Diaries, and it's done as modern day Lizzie doing a vlog as
I have seen some of these. I have, now that you've said it like that. Yes, I have.
It has the world's best Lydia and one of the world's best Darcys, because by the end of it, as he basically, they do the interpretation of him just being intensely socially awkward. And I also saw ghosts of that Darcy in this one, because you could definitely tell super socially awkward.
It's like there's this video going around YouTube of the nightly version where every time you see him shut down, they play the Windows like crash sound and like 404 error. And it's like, yeah, okay, I get that. Now, if we're comparing Darcys, I'm not going to lie. My favorite Darcy is Matthew Rhys, or Death Comes to Pemberley, just because I feel like he really balances the affection towards Lizzie, but he's also like the hard Lord of Pemberley, and goes back and forth, and he does a very good job. But then you also have Matthew Goods Wickham. I liked Matthew Goods Wickham a lot better before we did A Discovery of Witches, which, by the way, you can go check out. It just reminds me that Matthew Good is such a great actor when he's not playing a vampire.
By the way,
I said what I said.
Discovery of Witches season 2, which we'll probably do as well.
Because we hate ourselves.
Because we love James Purefoy.
Okay, we do. And Domenico. We love Domenico.
And Domenico.
You realize this is yet another video we've managed to get Domenico.
We're just going to shoehorn Domenico into everything.
Until he gets the notice he deserves. He needs to be in more things.
Watch us shoehorn him into a book and like a various short stories of like characters just randomly discussing Domenico from A Discovery of Witches.
No. So we gotta write a book where the main character looks just like him, and that way when they run out of ideas in Hollywood, because they haven't done that yet, but whenever they run out of ideas in Hollywood, they can turn our book into a movie or a series, or Hallmark can pick it up or whatever, and him. He's the guy.
Anything wants some work.
There is a part, though, when Elizabeth was walking to go see how Jane was doing, or said, not everything needs to be a solo. Like, sometimes you have to save your sister was, like, the first line of that song. You know, we're starting to cross into the woods territory where you can maybe back off some of the Sondheim-esque feelings.
And one of my favorite songs, though, is Oh, Mr. Collins, I Can't Be Plainer.
Dude, his faces during that song.
Was guys.
Second best Mr. Collins ever.
This Mr. Collins was like extra layers of creepy.
Oh, yes. During his entire song about which one of you will submit to me and obey me, I cringed both times watching it. And my mother I made my mother watch it the second time. She cringed.
I've watched it 4 times, and every time I watch it, it gets worse. That is the gift that just doesn't stop giving, no matter how much you want it to.
Well, that's why I'm like, he's the second best Mr. Collins. Obviously, I think that the one in the nightly version is the best Mr. Collins. But that's an amazing actor. That one's going to be hard to top. Even if you are that guy who's going to play, you know, that casting choice you love. The new Targaryen battle prince.
Do we have to talk about that?
Yeah, because he played Mr. Collins in the zombie version, and I wasn't really... I mean, he made me laugh, but he wasn't, like, skeevy.
Sorry, I have to live my Targaryen madness for the scene now. Because every time I think about House of the Dragon, I just want to start screaming. Actually, I was thinking, have you seen Lost in Austin?
No.
It's got a pretty good cast for Collins and for Jane, actually. I think this one came close to like the creepier version of the Lost in Austin's Collins. And by the way, I love that this is now turning into 18 million versions of Pride and Prejudice that you may or may not have seen, guys. Please check them all out.
Look, we've just missed adult interaction.
And we really have. I've been talking to a dog. You've been talking to a small child.
I can't pinpoint the moment I fell in love with this Darcy, but I think it
It's kinda
was after that dance. The dance where Elizabeth was like, and now we're dancing. And he was like, seemed a waste for you to dislike me standing still. Might as well dislike me while we're dancing. And it's like the song he sings after that one is when I realized like he's got this rock Broadway voice. So it's like the best of rock, the best of Broadway. And that song really tested, or it really tests vocal range, and I think he handled it so well. And I think that's when I realized, wow, this Darcy can belt it.
I was really wondering, like, it seemed like, yeah, this one, whoever was writing this was just like, let's just shift the keys and make everybody sing falsetto at random and then go low. And then I'm like, did we have to do that much?
No.
But I mean, it's pretty. I like the songs, but yeah, it does seem like they went a little extra with that kind of hijinks.
The lyrics were good, but I do think some of the key choices were a little weird. There's some places where you didn't need the dissonance. It made it sound like some of the actors couldn't sing in key, or that they were hitting the wrong note.
Yeah, I like I said, I'm not the music person, so like I would actually ask another one of my friends who's super music person to like watch it, because it's like, I need you to tell me why I am not loving all of these songs. And that's pretty much what he said too, was like they were getting very schmancy, I guess.
You'd have an accidental within a measure. And so if like I'm singing in C major and suddenly I decide to take an E and make it flat, yeah, it's going to sound weird. Sure, there are appropriate times. None of these really fit that. Like I said, I feel like the only person who really handled them well was Darcy. Now, one of his songs, I really liked the lyrics and I liked the vocals. I really hated the acoustic guitar accompaniment. Like, it felt out of place. It was after the Collins song and she found out Charlotte's gonna marry Collins. He sings a very emotional solo. She'd basically just rejected his marriage proposal. And they start acoustic guitar and I'm like, Fortunately, the lyrics and the backing instruments were good. The guitar didn't fit, but about halfway through, the strings start to overpower the guitar. They come to the forefront, and again, his vocals are just amazing. So he was able to make me not hate the song, but I really did not like that guitar in there.
Yeah, that's one of the songs that I've just sort of skimmed over in my brain. Speaking of her refusal of him, and then he writes the letter and she gets the letter, that argument between her and like ghost Darcy, kind of beautiful. Like, that's now one of my favorite rejection letter answer things. Like, I loved that so much. Again, with to the actual text could have turned into a musical right there and we would have been fine.
Lizzie was appropriately Lizzie. We'll just say that. Like, she was very good at playing Elizabeth Bennet, and that you like her because she's strong, headstrong, name of the song. She's headstrong and stubborn, and yet so prideful that, like, she annoys you at the appropriate times, but you get it. The That's Not the Man That I Know song is amazing. Like, when she starts questioning, and she's like, who the hell are you?
He doesn't talk about fish. He's not nice. Oh, I love that song.
I realized Darcy had won me over completely when her aunt was like, he may not be as handsome as Wickham. And in my mind, I went, what the is wrong with you? What's wrong with your... Oh, wait, I said that at the beginning of the play too, didn't I? Apparently he wasn't the man that I knew either. Look, ladies, if a man ever comes up to you and they have sideburns that kind of run like this, don't trust them. In my experience, they're never good people.
Like the sideburns or extra eyeliner with a goatee, like in a soap opera, you just know.
And there's so many touches of theater. Like, Mr. Collins also plays the uncle, and then Mr. Bennet also plays the servant who says all these nice things about Darcy, and actors are switching parts, and it just really brought back so many memories of having to switch costumes behind stage and getting in character, like, just within seconds. And I'm like, man, I think after watching movies for so long, you forget how much goes into a stage play. And
bring up Cats and how you can't transfer between stage and movie.
I think Cats deserves its own video if we're gonna talk about Cats. Okay, I'm gonna say this as someone who loves musicals, has studied music her whole life, and I mean, I'm not coming from a place of not knowing what I'm talking about. I'm not an expert, but I'm almost an expert. The guy who made Cats is the same guy who made the film version of Les Miserables. He should not be allowed to make musicals. So many choices just don't make sense. Les Miserables had an amazing cast. Russell Crowe, believe it or not, is a good singer. You wouldn't know that.
Right? You would never know about that movie.
You would not know that from watching his portrayal of Javert. I'm sorry. Okay, getting off topic. Just, again, before we get back on, some musicals shouldn't be translated to film unless you're actually just showing the stage.
It's tied into the theme of adaptations, though, because, I mean, this is a book that we all were like, what? A musical? That's gonna, huh? And watch it, we're like, oh no, that actually really works. It really, really works in some parts. But, you know, sometimes adaptation doesn't go so smoothly.
I wasn't super excited about watching it, but we had decided, okay, we're going to come back to YouTube. We stepped away from the channel for a bit because this was a really hard year for a lot of people for many different reasons. But we're like, okay, we're going to come back, and this probably is a good topic to come back with. But I remember opening up the video on Prime going, 2 hours? I have to sit through this musical for 2 hours? And I like musicals, and I was just not enthused about it. But I was like, I'm going to sit and I'm going to watch it and it's going to be fun. And about halfway through, I'm like, oh, there's only an hour left. It really did win you over. That said, if you're not a fan of musicals and you're not a fan of Austen, this isn't going to win you over. Like,
my husband made it 10 minutes and like ran away screaming because he doesn't like musicals or Jane Austen. So
right. So if you're sitting there and going, man, I want a musical, but I don't normally like musicals, and I just want something that's tough and gritty, you're going to want to watch Hamilton, or you're going to want to watch Les Mis, or Sweeney Todd, because they're basically the Departed of musicals. Spoiler alert, lots of people die in them. This is not going to be your cup of tea. Now, if you're someone like me, who I'm sure you can tell from all the black that I wear and my general pessimism, I'm a hopeless romantic, and I love Austen, and I love music, and so this was right up my alley. Allegra likes cute things, so of course she was going to like this.
I mean, I'm also the one who's the major Song of Ice and Fire nerd, so it doesn't always apply. But
there was a lot of cute things in A Song of Ice and Fire. Daenerys is cute.
Yes, she also, births dragons and burns slavers alive.
Yeah. So it's like, I would describe you as cute, but I wouldn't want to cross you.
Well, thank you. I also tried watching Emma. There's an Emma the musical that Prime recommends to you after this. It's watchable. I didn't despise it or hate it, but I didn't end up screaming, yay, Emma. I don't feel like I wasted the time, but I didn't.
To be fair, that's how I feel when I watch Emma.
Which Emma?
Emma. Any of them. I don't think there's been an Emma that I've loved. I mean, I like them. Don't get me. I'm not going to sit here and trash them. But if I have a choice between Emma and, actually, no, I'd probably watch Emma over Persuasion.
I was going to say, if you were about to say Persuasion, we were going to have to throw down because I hate Persuasion.
You know what? Screw them all and just watch Sanditon.
Sanditon's good.
If you like things with endings, don't
watch Sanditon.
But we have another video that we've been hearkening back to a lot of videos. If you want to know all about Sanditon, go back and watch that video. But just Theo James is kind of naked in some of the scenes, and that kind of makes up for it not having a real ending. So
yeah. Speaking of, I know there's the new Shondaland things coming to Netflix. The Bridgerton. Bridgerton. That's it.
I don't know how I feel about that.
I want to like it.
I don't.
I'm still bitter about Sanditon, but also I remember the Shondaland thing where she did Star-Crossed or whatever it was, that it was a Romeo and Juliet fanfic.
Yes.
Spoiler alert, that didn't go well. So, I have seen people online freak out about that. And I literally said to somebody online, I'm like, yeah, Dizzy, you remember Star-Crossed? Nobody's remembered it. I guess it's been mass erased from the population.
Yeah,
but just because Shonda rhymes on something doesn't make it gonna be good.
Look, Shonda's stolen enough of my ears. I hate watch Grey's Anatomy at this point. I used to like it, but now I just hate watch it because I'm one of those people who has to finish things out until you finally jump a shark. If I stop watching a series, you've done messed up.
I will say, though, Bridgerton's based on a series of books, so maybe having, I mean, it didn't say Game of Thrones, but maybe having some kind of outline will keep her from going full Grey's Anatomy. Fingers crossed, maybe.
Maybe for like a season or two before she hands it off to someone else and starts a new project.
Is that what happened to Grey's Anatomy? I don't actually know. I quit watching Grey's Anatomy years ago.
Yeah, I think the showrunner for Grey's Anatomy now is Krista Vernoff. You can tell when Shonda comes back and writes an episode. Shonda has a style. And don't get me wrong, Shonda is an amazing screenwriter. She is good at what she does. They're starting to kind of all feel the same. Like, they all have sort of the same storylines, and it's all the same drama. And I guess you could just chalk that up to, like, some things are cliche for a reason.
Yeah, I haven't watched a lot of Shonda Rhimes' program. I don't know why. I mean, yeah, I'm a fantasy nerd, so her one foray into fantasy was the Romeo and Juliet thing, and then I bailed out, so.
Well, you also have a thing about you demand things to make sense, and there comes a point in her shows where things stop doing that. I mean, you wandered away from Once Upon a Time, and I can tell you unequivocally that Grey's Anatomy has a moment where it's going to Once Upon a Time you, and you're going to walk away.
I mean, I watched it up until after Owen showed up. My friends and I were like super into Rome at the time, like we still kind of are. And so when Owen showed up, we were like, "Oh, Verenus is on Grey's Anatomy." And so then we started we were watching it more religiously again, because one of my roommates had been watching it the whole time anyway, because the joys of group living. And then they started softening his character, and we all just sort of evaporated. We're gonna watch other shit now.
Let me just say, if you hated what they did to Owen then, you would scream now.
Oh, I'm sure I would. You've told me some stuff, and I've seen stuff on Tumblr and GIFs and some of the Twitter.
I think there was a point where he became one of the most hated characters on the show. And he kept that for a long time. He's probably still up there. There are people who wonder why certain actors were let go of, but Kevin McKidd was still kept around. And that's just really heartbreaking for me because, like you, I was a fan of Kevin McKidd before Grey's Anatomy. I liked when Owen first came. He was a badass. And God, I have come to hate that character.
No, and I think also, how no matter what you think of Owen, in person, Kevin McKidd seems like he's really awesome. Like, all of his co-stars really like him. And obviously, and I've seen tons of behind the stuff, seen stuff from Rome and other projects he's done. By the way, he was so wasted in that Percy Jackson horribleness, but they're getting a new Percy Jackson thing.
I did see that.
Thank you, Disney. Yeah. Okay, back to Pride and Prejudice, which does tie into Rome, because in the Knightley version, there is Octavian is Mr. Bingley, which was a complete shift of characters, because if you've just seen Rome season 2 and then you watch the Keira Knightley Pride and Prejudice, you're like, when's Mr. Bingley just gonna kill everybody? You're just waiting. But
he's such a good Bingley.
He really is. And he's an amazing Octavian, which is a very strange. That guy's got more range than people give him credit for.
Oh, yes. And I sometimes wonder, if I get married, what kind of man am I going to marry? And I'd like to think I'm going to get so in our book, we wrote Joker. I like to think I'm going to get a Joker-like person, gruff, very tall, very silent and strong. I'm going to end up with a Bingley. That's just how it's going to work. I think I'm going to get the Alexander Skarsgård looking Viking dude who rides motorcycles and is a bad boy to the core, but deep down is a secret softie. And I just want that manly man. And I'm going to get a Bingley. And he's not going to be able to speak. I mean, I do like redheads, but that's not the point. The point is there's just something adorable about him. So if I ended up with a Bingley, I wouldn't be upset, but that's just how it's going to go. That's just my luck.
I'm sitting here Joker's a great fantasy. I don't want to marry Joker in real life. Ashcan has. That's too much drama.
I would marry Joker.
I'd date Joker.
No, look,
about 5 minutes.
I don't mean to spoil our book, but if I'm getting shot for this guy, he's marrying me. He's putting a ring on it. We're getting married.
I'd rather marry the Bingley, which is funny because that is not my husband's personality type at all.
No, but you married a StormCrow more than a land-holding English lord.
Yeah, he's closer to that, I will say.
He even has a bike. I want a guy with a bike. That's not like a ding ding bike, a vroom vroom bike.
Technically, my husband has both the ding ding and the vroom vroom.
Anyway, no, what I'm saying is, like, I have a type, and my type is very alpha male. It doesn't have to be Joker. Like, obviously, I don't want to marry someone who is in exactly Joker's situation. I don't need to marry a crime prince, okay? That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying alpha male. But I'm gonna end up with not an alpha male. I mean, that's been the crux of a lot of my relationship issues. They've not been alpha enough for me.
I mean, maybe you can get maybe a beta guy who's like super good at acting. You can roleplay.
Let's not get onto that ship. We won't come back to harbor if we do.
Hi everyone, we did warn you. This is gonna be like the most chatty, off-topic, random-ass YouTube thing ever.
Yeah, it's like, you had fair warning. This is less about Pride and Prejudice the musical and more about Allegra and Emily are just catching up.
It's been a long time of isolation, okay? A long time.
I've been remote teaching an 8-year-old. Not mine.
That's a circle of hell.
I was a teacher, and I never want to do this. Maybe it's because I was a high school teacher. But, like, you know...
You have my full support and sympathy, because, yeah, 8-year-old or children of any age under 27, I don't want to deal with right now.
Yeah, that's what an alpha male who doesn't want a baby. That's what I need. I did date before the pandemic. None of them were alpha. The one was very interested in the fact that we had been published and really wanted me to read through his book and connect him with our publisher.
Spoiler alert, dude. I hope it's erotica or romance, because our publisher isn't into anything else.
I'll have enough respect for him to not spoil his premise, because maybe a publisher will pick it up. I don't know, so I'm not going to give it away. I will just say he told me the premise. I'm like, you're such a dude writing what you think a chick should be, which really is going to show. I'm not saying dudes can't write chicks. Some dudes can really write chicks, but some dudes should not be writing chicks. Some dudes really ruin them.
I was gonna say, isn't there like an entire Twitter account of like guys writing women badly?
I don't know. I know that there's one that guys describing women badly. It's like, you know, their breasts were soaring or something like that, or like they walk down with their gossamer swan-like hips, and it's like, what the does that even mean? There's a difference between describing a woman badly and then being in their head and portraying a woman badly.
Oh, we have all read those books, though. We have all read something where we're like, just stop.
Well, it's kind of like, not to dog on them too much. I don't feel like we have, but like season 8 of Game of Thrones, the way they portrayed Daenerys as like this crazy PMS raging woman who was this mad queen, it's like, you don't, okay, you shouldn't have written that woman, but all right. Yeah, Daenerys got fucked. We'll just say that.
Hashtag I stand by Daenerys. I can't think of it off the top of my head. Like, there was a high fantasy book I tried to read in high school that was a guy writing a young, I think she was probably teenage-ish girl's perspective, and that's one of the first times I was ever reading something as a kid and went, I can't, and just like put it down. I don't think about boobs that much, dude, and I just got them.
More men should read Austen, especially if you're going to write. More men who want to write and have like feature females. You really need to read women authors, because it's like there's an insight there that I think you get beyond conversation or beyond observation. For me to write men the way that I do, I read a lot of books written by men, because a lot of females that I talk to, a lot of women authors, don't necessarily feel comfortable writing men. My form of research was just reading a lot from men, about men. And if I had questions like, what would a man do in this situation, I would go find a book on it. If you are a man and you want to write something, start with Austen. A lot of people would say she's very cliche, but I mean, I think she established some of the cliches.
I mean, yeah, she's 200 years old. Like, she kind of started a lot of them.
She's not my favorite female author, but she is good at portraying the female point of view, especially if you're writing something that's a period piece.
One of the things I love about Austen, like trivia-wise, is that she hated Emma.
Yeah.
She thought the character of Emma was absolutely horrible. She's like wrote her on purpose being horrible for most of the book. And a lot of people absolutely loved Emma, which is, I think, says a lot about, sometimes your intent versus how the audience takes a thing. But like, I am one of the people, I love Emma. I love the book Emma. I love the character of Emma because she's horrible and screws up for 90% of the book.
Well, I think it's different. in a sense. Like, you like her, but you recognize who she is. You're not sitting there defending her being a great, good person throughout the whole novel. Yeah, she was a brat.
But, like, as a teenager reading her, I didn't really notice that she was being terrible until the end. She's a sheltered, privileged, small town, rural area kid. Guess what I was? And she's actually a pretty good lesson for that exact demographic. Oh yeah, this is totally normal. This is totally what you would do if you got to be the popular girl for 5 minutes, because that's what she is. And then all of a sudden you realize, oh no, I've been a terrible person. And the really good update of Emma was Clueless. Because Cher is also really likable, but you realize she's doing terrible crap and making dodgy choices.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, Emma wasn't a bad person. She just was ignorant. She thought she was doing what she was supposed to be doing. And I think that's true for a lot of people. When I first read Emma, I didn't realize what she was doing was terrible until the picnic. She got really snippy with her friend who was below her in circumstance. And then she got yelled at, and you're like, oh, yeah, you have been kind of a dick this whole time, haven't you? So yeah, I think that was just normal. But I would rather read Emma and know that Austen hated her than read Pamela, who was held up as a I'm sorry, I saw your eyes, I didn't mean to do that. It's another example of a man writing a woman the way he thinks women should be. You have two examples that are both written in period times, and one is not good. But Pamela, I think, is good to read for what not to do with a woman writing one.
To be fair, it was also hysterical if you read the pop culture of the time references to Pamela.
Yeah.
And the fandom culture that arose around Pamela. Pamela was basically 50 Shades of Grey for 1780. It has fans and merchandise and fan clubs. The merchandising for Pamela, when they had like plates and tea towels and dolls, and I'm like, how 21st century is this? But it's about a horrible, unhealthy, terrible relationship and a complete Mary Sue, horrible, awful main character. Oh, this is familiar now.
And then you realize humanity's always been disappointing.
Right? Has there been a movie or miniseries of Pamela ever? I'm sure there has been.
I don't know. I've not seen one.
I know there's one for Clarissa, of all things, which is like the Pamela ripoff. Because I watched it on YouTube and did like a live tweet of it because it was bonkers insane. But it does have Sean Bean as the evil Count Olaf, weird villain / Christian Grey. I completely
Look, Sean Bean, say what you will about him, he's a beautiful man who was way too old to play Eddard Stark, but like still a beautiful man, and I'd watch him in most things.
He got me through Clarissa, so I can't really argue at that point. There's literally no sane reason anyone should be able to finish Clarissa. But then again, I finished the book Pamela, and then promptly read Shamala, which was far superior take on it. So, some old white dude in the 1700s wrote Pamela as like the model for all girls, to like a model of manners, but then it somehow became the 50 Shades of Grey kind of thing. Someone read it and got angry and did like a piss take of it, and so it's Shamala, and it's basically the main character is actually an evil hooker, and it's actually far more believable, better written, way better characters.
So basically what Pamela did for the genre is it created the first idea of fan clubs and merchandising and all that fun stuff, and then it also created this idea of parody and Weird Al Yankovicing and all this fun stuff that came from it, which honestly, like, my big disappointment is Moll Flanders is a much better 50 Shades of Grey for that time. And Daniel Craig got me through that. But I mean, Moll Flanders was badass. There is an example of a man writing a woman that I can get behind.
Moll Flanders is really cool. I like her a lot better than like Vanity Fair's Becky.
Evelina was all right. I read Evelina right after Pamela, and it was refreshing.
Evelina is clearly leading into the evolution that becomes Austen.
Yes.
Like, you can see reading that, you're like, oh, this is where we're going to get Pride and Prejudice from.
Yeah, but sadly, Pamela exists. And
I read it. Girl.
Huh? Yes.
Is Evelina written by a girl?
I think Frances Burney wrote Evelina. I forgot who wrote Pamela. I just know I hate him.
Samuel something? I don't know. I tried to erase as much of it as possible.
Everyone was named Samuel back then. Samuel or Joseph.
You're forgetting William.
No, I'm not.
Don't Williams and the Thomases.
Sorry, William was busy writing poetry, not novels. Pamela inspired a lot of things that went on to inspire Austen, and we wouldn't have a musical to talk about today if not for Pamela. So, thank you, Pamela. Now go f yourself.
Because I read it, and I'm still sorry that I read it, so.
Yeah, I had to write a whole lot of papers on Pamela. My favorite paper on Pamela was where I got to compare it to Evelina and basically spent about 20 pages dragging Pamela through the dirt. My professor did remark on how biased I seemed, to which I said, yeah.
Like, I don't know how you can get through more than 5 paragraphs of Pamela and not become instantly biased.
Right.
I don't think it's humanly possible.
I'm sorry, I don't believe in observational literary criticism. How am I going to critique it wwithout bias?
Yeah, you're kind of stuck working with the lens that is your own life experience. And if your life experience doesn't lead you to start reading Pamela and hate her, I'm very scared for you. Please go find an adult.
Reach out to us. I was about to say, reach out to us. Spend about 15 minutes with us just in a conversation, and that'll change.
I honestly
just book an appointment. Maybe we'll set up a Patreon where that's one of the perks. That's not a perk.
That's just a service. I think we should probably wrap this up so that it's not 8 million hours of you and me bitching about Pamela.
I will cut some of this out. I promise. I'm not going to go over the top on editing, but some of this is not going to make it to YouTube.
It could be like the outtakes. Like, would you like Allegra and Emily just to bitch about the book Pamela for 20 minutes? Because we can't. I've been stuck doing like a bunch of medieval research reading right now, so I can totally go off for like 20 minutes about weird medieval Arthurian romances.
My life's about to be back to editing and more editing. So yeah, that's what you have to look forward to from us coming into the new year.
Yep. We do have a manuscript she is editing. We've got StormCrows book 2 should be getting finished, polished, into our publisher sometime in January, theoretically.
Should be flying out the coop soon. I'm sorry. I'll see myself out.
Yeah, I promised it to someone in like June, and then like sequelitis hit this book so friggin' hard, and then a pandemic hit this book so hard, so.
And I think June just historically is not a nice month for either of us. There's just it was a rough summer, we'll say that. And then the fall was basically recovering from summer.
And a lot of the pandemic stuff really, like, for whatever reason, I was kind of on a time delay. So we had lockdown, kind of, sort of. But the numbers started soaring in June, May, June, and everything went out the window in summer. So, and that was also the time that I'm usually busy doing events and having friends and a life. And suddenly my entire like yearly cycle was just gone. I didn't handle it well, guys.
And then like on my end, some of you know that I left teaching. And so, you know, I had this plan of going and getting a job somewhere, but my immune system's not great. I'm not going to get too far into that, but you know, it's been well, what am I going to do for income? And struggling with, I've been working since I was 18. Like, I've never not had a job. And so acclimating to this new reality has been very tough for me. You know, waking up and not feeling like, well, what am I supposed to be doing? Usually I'm waking up and getting ready for work, or I'm getting ready for something. And it's been a hard adjustment. So I think we're both coming to a point where we're crawling out of our mental muck. And it's not been easy, but we're getting there.
Yeah, actually, I've actually been managing a routine lately, which is how my writing works, is I have to have a routine. So theoretically, we'll getting back into that in the next, more writing eased back into that, because turns out when you don't do like laundry or clean the house for like 3 months, you know, you kind of have to do that.
Someone very wise once told me that if I want this to work, I have to treat it like it's a job, because, you know, as fun as writing is, and everyone who likes to write has this, I'm gonna be an author, but it has to be your job if that's gonna be your reality. It is about finding that routine, and it'll be easier going forward, I think. So there's projects on the table, not just with StormCrows and the other manuscript. We have some other things in the works, so keep an eye out. Hopefully we'll have some more videos up pretty soon for you. I'm sure something awful will hit a streaming service and we'll be able to cut that up, or something that we love. And if there's anything you want us to talk about, if you've come across something obscure, or you really want us to talk about a show that you're into or a movie that you loved, let us know, and we'll be happy to either praise it or eviscerate it, whatever you want us. Whatever content you want, we will give it to you.
And we probably will do Discovered Witches Season 2, which is coming soon. I've started to see the ads popping up, so.
Man, things just sneak up on me. Like, I just realized Cobra Kai is coming out next month. So, I mean, like...
I'm waiting for The Witcher. All I care about is The Witcher Season 2.
We do have a Witcher video already, so don't... If you were going to suggest we do The Witcher, just go back into our videos and you can click on that and like it and all that fun stuff. So, yeah, make sure to like and subscribe and ding that bell for notifications. And thanks for listening. This was really cathartic. We really needed to chat with you guys today. This was nice.
Thank you for listening to us, silent partners. All right,
Love
guys.
You.
Have
Be
a good
safe.
night. Have a happy new year.
Oh yeah. Do that. Yay, 2020 is done. All right. Have a happy new year and happy holidays. Later, guys.
Happy holidays.